Hi, my name is Nicole, and thank you so much for joining me today for another yoga flow. Today's yoga flow is all going to be focused on the hips and lower portion of the body. We're not going to be doing too many standing poses. This is all more reclined or lower on the mat in lunges. So we're really going to be working towards getting a deep hip release. We're really going to be working towards stretching the inner outer hips as well as the hip flexors. So it's going to be a total hip care flow today. In terms of intentions for today's flow, you could, if you're looking for a metaphorical one, think of it as releasing any tension that's being held within the body, especially within the hips. They carry so much in terms of us every day and our weight that it's really great that we check in, of course, with our whole body, but especially the hips, because if the hips are a little tight, everything under them can also be affected. So we're really going to treat this like some hip TLC today. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and we are going to get started in a wild child's pose. So we're going to bring the knees to the width of the mat, big toes touch. We're going to send the hips back and walk the hands forward as we lay our heads down towards the mat. Now, you can stack one forearm on top of the other and kind of press the head here as well. You can also have some blocks ready at the side if you are a fan of blocks. I know I am. And just kind of rest, or a pillow. You can treat it like a pillow too. Whatever variation you prefer. We're just going to hold here as we think on our intention. It really depends on what you kind of want in this flow as well, because bringing the hands out towards the top of the mat and sinking the chest down is a really activating stretch for the upper half of the body, whereas folding is more passive. So totally up to you here. So we're going to take a couple more breaths here as we ground down in this first pose. And I know I mentioned earlier that today's theme is about the hips, of course, and providing TLC, but also opening and releasing tension, releasing anything that maybe isn't serving the body, any stagnant energy. So in terms of an intellectual or spiritual kind of theme, you could even take it there and say, where in my mental life and where in my mental space are there things that aren't serving me? Where in my spiritual life are there things that aren't serving me? And not to bring judgment to it, just to bring awareness more than anything. So taking one more breath. Very good. You're going to inhale, come up from whatever variation of child's pose you're taking, and we're going to bring it up to our tabletop. Coming into tabletop, we have our shoulder over our elbows, over our wrists, and our hips directly over our knees. We're going to start with our cat-cow, so we're going to drop belly, lift gaze, big breath in. And exhale, round and contract through the spine. Good. We're going to take about 5 more of those. And feel free to make any little movements here that feel good. Maybe take notice to how your body is reacting to these poses. Again, not from a place of judgment, just to notice how the body's feeling today. Good. Keep moving. Good. On the last cat-cow, bring yourself to tabletop for just a second and bring your left foot out to the left side of the mat and take a cat-cow with one leg out to the side. So drop belly, lift gaze. See how this changes the stretch. Exhale, round and contract. Good. 2 more. Keeping that left foot out, toes pointing forward. See what this brings up for you in this stretch. Good. Last time. And good. Once finished, come back to neutral tabletop. Right hand is going to stay on the mat. Keep that left foot out. Left hand comes up to the ceiling. As you gaze upwards towards your left hand, we're going to hold here, a little bit of a twist here. We're just going to hold about 3 deep breaths as we breathe. And if it's a little uncomfortable in the shoulder to hold this pose, you can always bring the hand behind the back, or you can bring it to the shoulder. Options are totally up to you in terms of which variation you'd like to take. On the next exhale, bring that hand right back down to the mat. Inhale, bring that foot back in, and then we're just going to switch sides. So right foot steps out to the right side of the mat. Let's take that little bit of cat-cow 3 times. Drop the belly, lift the gaze, big breath in. Exhale, round to contract here. Good. Very good. 2 more. Good, keep breathing, one more. See what this brings up for you here on this side. It's different than the other side, how so? And then, once finished, come back to that neutral, tabletop with that right leg out. Left hand stays on the mat, right hand comes up to the ceiling. If you can do that, if you can bring it there. We're looking up towards that right hand, or you're taking whatever variation you took on the other side. 2 more deep breaths here. Trying to keep one shoulder stacked on top of the other. One more breath here. Exhale, bring that hand right back down to the mat, and inhale. Bring that leg right back in. So we're back in our tabletop, and we're just going to jump straight into it. So we're going to tuck toes. We're going to curve the spine a little bit, dropping the belly just ever so slightly. And then imagining someone's pulling us up by our hips, we're going to lift the knees off the mat and send the hips straight up and back. The chest is arched forward towards the toes. The gaze is facing towards the toes, and we are in our first downward facing dog. The fingers aren't closed together, they are open really wide, grounding into the mat with the roots of a tree. And you're in down dog. Now that we're here, we're just going to take a couple little leg variations of this pose. So most likely, if this is the first type of movement you're doing for the day, the legs are still pretty tight, so they're not going to reach the mat and the heels yet, and that's totally fine. They may not in this practice. That's not what we're practicing for. So we're just going to start to alternate bending through each leg, trying to keep the hips nice and straight as we go, trying to keep them nice and still. And again, as you're flowing through here, notice what sensations arise for your body or your mind in this movement. So is one leg a little tighter than the other? Maybe you stay with one leg straightened to really give the brunt of the stretch to that side as opposed to continuing to switch. You know, just see what movement variation would really serve you here, and do it for 2 more deep breaths. Very good. We're going to start on the right side. So left foot stays on the mat. Let me come up a little bit. Right foot comes back behind 3-legged dog. Look between the toes and step. We're in our high lunge. If you'd like, you can take blocks on either side of the foot to place them directly under the hands to give yourself a little bit more lift. Totally up to you. If you're good here, we're going to lower this back knee, untuck the back toes, and come up as we press the chest forward towards the top of the mat into a little bit of a crescent low lunge. So the difference. So let's say I'm looking down in this lunge, right? What I want to do is bring my gaze upwards and arch my chest forwards as if someone's doing a gentle pull to the top of the mat, okay? We're gonna really lean into this left hip and feel that stretch there, if you can. If not, that's totally fine. Just notice whatever sensation comes up. But for me, the sensation that's arising is really in this hip flexor. So we're gonna hold here. I'm actually gonna bring a block out. Give myself a little bit more depth in this pose. That's another thing blocks are really great for. You can also make your pose feel deeper within the body, which is really nice. It can give you a little bit more lift that you didn't have previous. So one more breath in this low lunge. Pardon me, I have hiccups. I know. That's what's arising for me in this practice is my hiccups. You are going to inhale, and on the exhale, the left foot is going to bend or kick up towards your sit bone, so a nice bend in that left knee. You're going to keep your left hand on the block, reach up and over with your right hand. See if you can grab that foot. If you have a strap or a belt, now would be a good time to bring that out. See if you can grab that foot with that tool. Looking over the right shoulder, if that's available to you, we're gonna hold 3 deep breaths. Nice little quad stretch here. Again, we're still really melting ourselves into that left hip. And exhale, release, coming back to that low lunge. Very nice. Tuck the back toe, lift that back leg, come up into runner's lunge, and I'm gonna come into like a half pigeon. So for those of you who know, pigeon kind of brings this leg to a 90-degree angle. We're not gonna do that today. What we're gonna do is we're gonna bring the foot so that it's in towards the left thigh and come down, okay? And again, you can use your blocks. For this one, you're gonna really sink and press into the right hip. okay? And then once you're here and you have that nice little half pigeon, you're going to walk the hands out towards the top of the mat. And you can either hold here, or you can bring them in, facing or framing the chest, and have a nice bend in the elbows here, or one arm on top of the other, you can rest your head. Whichever variation you're choosing, we're going to do for 3 deep breaths. Try to let the right hip really sink into this pose. Let the hips in general really sink here. Let gravity do all the work here. Very good. On the next inhale, from whichever variation you are taking, you're going to inhale, press up. You're going to tuck the back toes, kind of carefully bring yourself to sit along the long edge of the mat. And what we're going to do is come into fire log, right? Fire log? Fire log. Fire log pose. So we're going to bring the left foot so it's facing or touching the mat if we can, right? If not, you can always bring a block under. So this knee is in line with this ankle here. And then we're going to try to stack the right leg on that the same. So if this is a little uncomfortable for you, you can bring your feet in just a little bit. You're really going to, once here, take the hands and press them into the hips. Really active hip stretch here. So we're going to hold here, sit up nice and tall. You're more than welcome to hinge at the hips and fold down. That will intensify the stretch. But otherwise, we're just going to hold 3 deep breaths. If this is a little bit too much for you, consider sitting up and just again seeing what sensations arise for you in this pose, okay? Very good. To come out of this, we're just going to gently, you can use the hand, use my hip, bring the feet out to either side, and then we'll do a little bit of a windshield wiper motion. So with the feet splayed out nice and wide, pointing into either direction, hands on the knees, we're just going to do a nice little bend over to the right and turn our bodies to face the direction which we're bending the foot. So coming up to center, bending to the left. Yes. And if your body makes any noises, creaks, cracks, while we're going through these movements, as long as it's not painful at all, it's fine. I like to say that that's just the body's way of making space and releasing the tension. My hips are definitely a little tight today. So one more time on the left. Very, very good. And then we're just going to turn around to the top of the mat. Hands come forward, coming to tabletop, coming to downward facing dog. Very good. And once we're here, we're just going to gently bring the knees to the width of the mat, big toes touch, come into that wild child's pose, whichever arm variation you are comfortable with. If child's pose is a little bit uncomfortable for you in the pelvic region, you can also take a block or a pillow and just kind of slide it under where your sit bone rests. Or another variation, if it's more comfortable for you, is to, instead of bringing your knees wide, you can bring them to touch, toes to touch, send the hips back, and come here. This one's not super hip stretch oriented. It's a slight stretch. The other one's a little bit deeper. So just take into consideration all the things when you're going into whichever pose is going to serve you best, okay? So 2 more deep breaths here, and then we're going to do that whole little flow on the other side. Very good. Inhale, come up. We're going to meet back in our downward facing dog to take it to the left side. So left leg comes up, 3-legged dog. Look beyond the hands or between the hands. Step that left leg through, coming into our runner's lunge. And then lower the back knee. Bring the chest forward towards the top of the mat. Grab your blocks if you'd like to do so. And really melt into that right hip. I love this pose. We're gonna hold here 3 deep breaths. Really good pose to do if you're someone who sits down for work a lot. The hips get so tight when we're seated for a long time, and that's a lot of our jobs. I mean, my job includes that a lot of the time. So it's really nice to just spend some time stretching those hips out. All right, nice big inhale. Exhale and bring that right foot up towards the sit bone. And then right hand stays in the block, left hand reaches up and over if it can, or grab a belt or strap. Look over the left shoulder, holding here in this stretch, 3 deep breaths. Good, exhale, release. Very nice. Tucking the back toes, lifting, we're going to come back to our runner's lunge, just to lift that left leg, lay it down so that left foot is touching or near the right hip. And then you can either use your blocks to stay up nice and firm, or walk the hands to the top of the mat and recline here. Breathe. Good. Inhale, lift up through the fingers if they were up to the top of the mat. And you're just going to bring that leg around facing the long edge of the mat. And we're going to take fire log with the right leg touching the mat this time and the left leg on top. All right. So a couple options once you're here is to just keep the hands on the knees, pressing lightly, sitting up nice and tall. You can even bring the hands to either side of the hips and kind of use them to bring the chest up nice and tall, to just feel whatever sensation is just coming from that pose naturally. Or if you want it deeper, hands on the knees, sit up nice and tall. Through the hips, we hinge slightly forward. Very good. Inhale, sit up. You can use your hand to just bring one leg out on the other side. You're gonna hear a lot of cracking from me. I crack a lot through my hips. It's not painful, don't worry. It happens to me a lot. And then we're going to take that windshield wiper flow again. So taking the hands on the knees, just bringing the knees down towards the ground, facing the right first. Inhaling to come up, going to the left. We're gonna do that 2 more times, just switching sides as we go. One more. Last time. And very good. Coming back to neutral, we're just gonna bring our legs under us, come back to tabletop, to come right into our downward dog, to come to child's pose. So whichever variation is going to serve you best, we're gonna hold that child's pose for 5 deep breaths. Now in these 5 deep breaths, we're really going to focus on the intention that we had for today's practice, which was to give our hips a little bit of TLC, to release any tension that was no longer serving us, either in the body, physically, the mental body, intellectual body, or the spiritual body, and to be aware of sensations as they arise without judgment, okay? So think back to the poses that we just did, think back to how the movements felt in those bodies, and take 3 to 4 more deep breaths here. Very good. Inhale to come up. Bring yourself or your sit bone to the mat. And bring the feet out in front of you. I'm going to face you so you can see this a little bit better. You're going to bring the soles of the feet to touch. The fingers are going to come in between the pointer toe and the big toe. Is that the pointer toe? I don't know. Once here, you're going to sit up nice and tall, nice curve through this upper spine. And as you exhale, hinge in the hips. You can even use the elbows to press into the legs. Nice deep hip stretch here. 4 deep breaths. Good. Inhale, bring yourself up. You can use your hands on the other sides of the knees to bring the legs together and face the top of the mat. You're going to let the legs fall onto the mat with the toes flexing up to the head, seated with the hands on the thighs. Okay, really active staff pose here. From here, right foot, right ankle is going to come to the top of the left knee. You're going to bring your hands directly behind you. And then when you're ready, on the exhale, bring this left leg up and in as you use your hands to kind of bring your chest closer to this leg. Now, I will say the closer that your chest is to this right leg, the more intense the stretch is. So you can always walk this front leg out a little bit to ease some of that deepness if you'd like to. Otherwise, once you've come to a place that's comfortable here, we're just going to start to move it back and forth. Okay. Breathe here. Very good. Exhale, release. Bring that foot back to neutral. Tap them out a little bit and switch sides. So left foot now, or left ankle, comes to the top of the right. Bring that right leg in as much as, or as little as you'd like. And then when you're ready, rock back and forth. Just a couple breaths here. Good. Exhale again. Let that leg come back to the mat. Tap them out a little bit. And then you can use your hands to scoot yourself all the way down to the mat to lay down. A couple more poses here. If your knees or your feet are still on the mat, you're just going to kick off on an exhale. Bring the knees into the chest. Wrap the hands around the knees if you can, or interlace your fingers around them, whatever works. You can even take a strap here if that helps. And just come into this wind release. Holding here 4 to 5 breaths. Good. Reach with the hands, grab the feet, the ankles with the pant, whatever you can grab, and pull the knees in towards the armpits. Happy baby here. And if you'd like to, you can even add a little bit of a rock back and forth. Just a couple deep breaths in this last pose. And as you're ready, you can exhale, come into your Shavasana or your corpse pose. And you can do that a couple different ways. If you'd like a little bit more support for the low back, you can bring the feet to the width of the mat and let the knees fall into each other. You can also, if you would want to take your Shavasana with another hip opener, bring the feet and knees together and allow them to just fall open naturally. You can also place pillows or blocks under them at this time to better support them if this is a little bit too much. And then, of course, the final variation, or 102, is to bring your feet all the way down to the bottom of the mat. Hands are facing upwards towards the ceiling. And we breathe here. if you want, you can also roll over onto the side and bring a pillow or bolster right here or right here under your head and in between your shoulders. So whichever variation serves you best, you may take. And we will start the Shavasana process. We will start to wind down a little bit. In whatever posture you've decided to take today, I'll invite you to close your eyes with your hands open to the earth if possible, or open towards the ceiling, open for receiving. And think back on today's practice. So how did the physical body feel going through these hip openers? What sort of sensations came about from moving our body and breathing in those ways? Do you feel as though you were able to release some things that maybe weren't serving you, whether it is mentally, physically, intellectually, or spiritually? And for the rest of Shavasana, for the rest of the duration of the class, I'd like you to focus on what you'd like to invite in now instead. Now that we've made some space, what are you looking forward to bringing into your life or your body? That can be focusing on your physical, your mental, intellectual, or spiritual body. Gently allow again the eyes to close, mouth to open softly if you need to. And make sure you're not willingly holding any tension here, that we are open fully to receiving. And I will let you know in a couple moments when it's time to wake up. You may gently begin to wiggle the fingers, wiggle the toes, as you gently start to introduce consciousness back to the body. Once you're ready, or as you begin to bring yourself out of it, to readjust to the light, you can gently and softly blink the eyes open. Maybe you open and close the mouth just a little bit, or take a nice yawn. And then as you are ready, you may roll over onto one side and bring yourself up to any seated position that is comfortable for you. And we will close today's practice by inhaling, bringing the hands up overhead, imagining in between the hands, holding everything that we created for ourselves. And as we clasp palms together, we exhale, bringing all of that down to our heart center, where it may never leave or be undone. As we bow forward, sealing it. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure to flow with you today, and I can't wait to see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.